Romance at a glance. Romance at a glance.
What you say now?
Romance at a glance.
Go ahead, girl. Dear Romance Besties, this season we will be exploring dark romance. That means I need to give y'all a little trigger warning.
We are going to be reading books where consent is murky at best. There will be triggering topics of psychological and physical abuse, manipulation, kidnapping, slavery, rape, bullying, bodice ripping, and sexual assault on the page.
If this is not your cup of tea, we get it. We have lots of great books for you in our previous seasons and more coming up next season.
Without further ado, Shani, welcome to the dark side.
Ooh, thank you, Bridget. I'm ready.
Hope to see you out there.
Hello, Romance Besties. Welcome to another episode of Authors at a Glance. With me today is my beautiful co-host, Bridget. How you doing, girl?
I am doing so good, Shani. It is so nice to be here with you.
Yo, if you guys can't hear it in our voice, we are super stoked because today we're interviewing Avril Ashton. And let me tell you, we love her. Avril is an indie author who writes super dark, super hot dark romance. We went deep into all the dark and taboo elements this week. Avril was so forthright and super funny, and we for sure got really into it. Plus, she gave some excellent writing tips and showed her own work some love, which we loved. I want to let y'all know before we get into this is not safe for work. And I know we say that a lot for our episodes, but this one really ain't safe for work. So buckle up, kids, because we about to go. She needs no introduction. This is our interview with Avril Ashton. Let's get it poppin'.
We're so excited to have you. Thank you for coming on our show.
Thank you for inviting me on. You're my first.
Oh my
Yay!
God.
You're my first.
We love the podcast. Cherry is our favorite
You're
thing.
my very first.
Well, we are very honored that you chose us to be your very first.
Thank you.
I do have to say, just so that everyone who's listening knows, we were going to read Call the Coroner, and we did read Love the Sinner for the podcast, as you guys are well aware, because it's coming out this week. I do want to tell you guys that you should also read Call the Coroner. We're going to talk about it in this interview, but I want to start out by saying, Avril, that book was dark. Okay.
It was, yes.
I liked it because we have been discovering that the dark romances that are recommended to us are a lot of like dark romance with a heart of gold. And we are like, where's the real cray-cray stuff? And that book was cray-cray.
Yeah, I like this because it's, when I write what I like to read, and it was my taste for dark romance weren't being met. There were a lot of, he's the villain, but he's not really.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he's a bad guy, but he's not really. And I wanted to write about the bad guy being an actual bad guy, doing bad guy things, but also he gets to have sex and he gets to fall in love. And he gets to have a happily ever after.
Well, we appreciate that you're doing God's work.
The Lord's work. Let me tell you right now. I honestly, we've had this conversation. I was just like, why? I was like, I need someone to lean into the darkness, lean into stop taking me to the edge and coming back.
I feel like a lot of authors, they start at that level and they sort of pull back a bit. Probably afraid of what the readers might think if they sort of take it there. And I like to take it there. I would like to take it there. I would like for you to take me there with you as you're going there. Thank you.
Yes.
That's what I said. I was like, thank you very much. I'll consider it, Avril. I'll consider it.
Yesterday in our pre-production meeting, I was explaining Call the Coroner, and I was like, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, you guys, and then this happens. And they were just laughing at me. They're like, you're a crazy person. But I loved it.
Thank you.
Okay, so I do think it's really interesting, the balance though between, for instance, a lot of books, even in dark romance, they kind of shy away from the main characters being violent towards one another.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering how you balance something like that, if they're torturing the other person or have shot the other person or something along those lines, but then balancing that with the fact that they are going to feel lust and eventually love.
Well, if we're doing violence, let us do violence and let us be explicit in our violence if we're showing violence. That's one thing. I am very explicit with my violence, but it's a fine balance between having them be so violent, going all the way, and then also having to sort of temper that against or with them falling in love or the attraction coming sort of peeking forward. So it's a really fine line. And honestly, to this day, I don't know how I managed to pull that off. I don't know how I managed to pull that off. I really don't. It's difficult to explain, and I think it's also difficult to execute. Going all out with violence between two characters who are eventually we know are going to have to fall in love and have a happily ever after, because it's sort of a you don't want the readers to be like, well, he did all of this. How do we forgive and how do we have them fall in love when they did all these bad things to each other? Which is what you do is you have them do bad things to each other. So he cancels it out. You cancel it out.
Everybody does bad things.
Cancel it out. So.
That's actually a really good point.
Do you think
that's how it fits?
Do you think it helps that a lot of your main characters are both men versus like a reader might be more uncomfortable with a male character being violent towards a female character?
Definitely.
Whereas like two male characters, it might be less unacceptable. Not acceptable, but less unacceptable.
Yes. Yeah, it's a definite, it's easier to write violence between two men than it is to write violence between a man and a woman. And I'm actually writing male female where the woman is the one who is quote unquote the villain and has done some extremely bad stuff, and she is one of my favorites and I adore her, but I do get pushback like I don't like her, she did that, and I'm always of the mindset that why is it okay for the man to do all of these things and we're like, oh my God, he's so dreamy, I love him, he's my book boyfriend. But when a woman does it, it's like, oh, there's a double standard. And it is easier to write violence between two men who eventually fall in love than it is to write violence between a man and a woman. I haven't yet written that book where a man commits violence to the woman and the woman is not on the same playing field or the same wavelength. They're always on the same wavelength. That's where we always start off at. Them always being at the same wavelength, same bad guy, same everything. So it's always equal. No matter what, it's always equal.
You know what's funny? It's like I've been like processing a lot of things from like childhood and stuff like that. But one of the things that it's kind of fucked up, but I laugh at is they had a teacher, like this person come into my class when I was like in the 9th grade, and they gave a whole talk about domestic abuse, right? And they were like, if your dad is hitting your mom, if your dad is if your dad is whatever. And I remember raising my hand and going, but what if your mom beats your dad, right? And I remember them just staring at me. And then nobody asked me anything. Like
nobody can possibly conceive of that happening.
It just like happens. It was almost like they thought I was joking or something like that, but I wasn't. I was very much like, what if the roles are reversed?
Exactly.
They just kept moving on and didn't even address it.
Yeah, it's not addressed, and it's sad that where women aren't seen as people who can get violent and who can do bad things, and we're mostly consider that we accept the violence and we sort of live with it, and it helps us be stronger and suffer. And if a woman decides that you did something to me and I would like to respond violently, it's like, really? But if a man does it, it's like, oh, well, yeah, good for him. Yeah,
like unhinged or something's wrong with you. And it's
it's like go to therapy and write in your journal about it. But a man doesn't get the same response if he responds to something in a violent way. It's like expected. With a woman, not so much, which is not fair.
Yeah. So you've written a couple different series. Do you map everything out ahead of time, or do you kind of like finish one book and then you just are like, what's happening next?
Yeah. I'm constantly in the what's happening next phase. I do not plot anything. I do not plan anything. Every book I've written has been a blank page and me going, okay, what's next? And somehow the book gets written and I'm just surprised as everybody else when that happens. Nothing is, for instance, Call the Coroner. I sat down to write that book knowing that Daniel and Stavros were going to be love interests. And knowing beforehand that Stavros had killed Daniel's wife. And I just sat down, chapter 1. Okay, now what? How do we make it? We already know what's going to happen. How do we make it work? How do we get from point A to point B? I never know. None of my series are planned. They're all interconnected, all intertwined, but nothing is planned. It just so happens that as I'm writing, I decide, okay, well, I need a character to show up. Okay, well, I have a character from a different series. Okay, well, let's bring him in. And then it sort of just takes up on its own. My brain is a wonky and weird place. And it just so happens that there are cobwebs and spider webs and everything sort of intricately makes sense at the end. In the midst of it, I don't know what's happening. I have no clue what's happening. I am always surprised, deliciously surprised, but always surprised when it all works out.
That's so,
I don't know. It just happens.
That's so interesting. I have this kind of hypothesis that our brain is always like all of our thoughts are interconnected. We don't see it. Like our brain is doing the heavy lifting behind the scenes.
I believe that 100%.
Yeah. And then you just walk into a thing and you're like, well, what a coincidence. That just makes sense.
Exactly.
And it's like, no.
Yes, all the time. It's like, oh. So that's why I wrote this in chapter 5.
Yeah.
That's why. Oh, okay. All right, let's go with it.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I really dig the thing about what you said earlier, but it's about canceling things, like they got to be bad to each other. They cancel each other out. Then you can find the love. Every book we're reading, I have been trying to figure out what's the thing that makes it make sense for the characters. How are they finding love? Also, a thing that I'm finding in dark romance that makes books not work for me is when the main characters have nothing in common. And that's happening a lot. They just love each other because they see each other. And oh wow, they're hot and whatever. But I'm like, what sustains this relationship for the course of the book that makes me buy what's going on? And it was interesting because your books do something so beautiful. And I would like to say thank you. You jump into the action.
Yes.
You jump into, you don't give me a whole bunch of pages I got to get through before that book starts. And I appreciate it.
Yes. That was literally my next thing, Shawnee. I was going to be like, talk to us about how action starts on page 1.
But like I said, I like to write what I like to read. And I like action. I like violence. I like explicit sex. I like everything to keep going and going and going. And if it slows down, then you lose me and you never want to lose me. And as a reader, I know what happens when the action in a book slows down as I'm reading. So I take that and I bring it into my author brain. And because first of all, I'm a fan of my books. I am a huge fan of my characters. I reread those books. Can I curse?
Yes, absolutely.
I reread those motherfuckers every day. And I fangirl just like everybody else. So
that's awesome. I love that.
So I enjoy my books. So as when I'm writing them, that's a whole different thing. I don't want to deal with those motherfuckers. Those motherfuckers make me cry and they hurt me. But when I'm done with them and they've been published, I go back to them and I read them from the reader perspective, and I adore those books. And so being a reader, a voracious reader, I just finished reading 2 books before I came on. As a reader, I know what I'm looking for. I know what I want. So basically, I'm just writing everything from me. And it just so happens that everybody else likes them as well. I like action.
It kind of reminds me of 2 things. When I was a kid, I would rewrite the endings of books that I hated the endings of you know? I was like, this is some bullshit. I'm just gonna, and I have like notebooks before fan fiction was like a thing on the internet, and then I transferred to that. But like, I had like notebooks and notebooks of like rewrites because I was like, you know what, I want this book to end this way, and then I'd read them over and over and over again because I was like, this is how the story like should have ended. And I like that you said that you're a fan of your own stuff, because so many times when we talk to authors, they don't ever reread anything. Once they put it out, they just can't. They just can't.
I've heard authors say that.
You know?
I don't get it. I have favorites. I have favorite kisses. I have favorite sex scenes. I have favorite everything. And I reread those. Sometimes I would go back to read because I need a reference to something else. And I lose hours just rereading it as if I just discovered it, as if I don't know what's going to happen. I'm laughing at the funny bits. I am crying at the hard and emotional bits. I am squirming at the sexy bits. I am a fan.
Yeah. I was having a conversation yesterday, and I remember this interview with Adele, and she was talking about how there's some songs she doesn't like that are so old. She's like, I'm not in that relationship anymore. I don't like singing this song because it's no longer relevant and whatever. And I was like, I don't have that problem with my music. I go, I listen to my own damn songs and I love that shit every time. And I don't know if it's because I'm a Leo and we're a little narcissistic. But I don't write love songs, and specifically I write like situational things, and so they're always fucking relevant, and so I have no problem like singing them, or like they seem always relevant, you know. And I feel like if you're writing books for yourself and you're writing the sex scenes that you want to read and the characters you want to read, that's so yummy to be able to go back and be like, like super.
I mean, I think the obvious question is, what is your favorite sex scene of all of your books, and which book is it in, so that our readers and listeners
my favorite, absolute favorite sex scene is from my Run This Town series, book 3 on Mask You. It is the main characters are Elias, he's an assassin, and Lucky, he is he just so happens to be the son of the parents who Elias assassinated when Lucky was a kid. So right there, so much conflict, so much deliciousness.
An age gap too.
Age gap, yes.
Ooh, little daddy,
established couple. So much heart comfort, so much pain, so much it's such a good book. And you want me to describe that sex scene for you?
Yes, we do. Yes, ma'am. Just get comfortable here.
They go to a hotel. Elias is in a hotel, and Lucky goes to him because Elias keeps popping in and out of Lucky's life. Just random dude who just pops up, and Lucky starts feeling something for him, and Elias is like, no, you know, you're too young and whatever. But also he knows he killed the dude's parents, so he can't go there. And Lucky takes it upon himself to go to him in the hotel room, and you know, stuff ensues. Stuff in which Lucky tells Elias to crawl, and Elias gets on his knees and crawls. And what ensues is one of the most filthy, dirtiest scenes I have ever written. And I've written some filthy dirty.
I was going to say, in the two books I've read so far, you've written some real out there scenes.
I've written some filthy dirty scenes.
You just said something that I love, which is actually in both the books, I mean, in different ways, but someone is like commanding, like you do the dirty talk well.
Oh my God, I do, because that's one of my things.
Get on your knees, go on the bed. Like I eat that. That is like, Shawnee told me, because she started reading this before I did. She's like, Bridget, you're going to like this book. I was like, am I? And then
dirty talk is not one of my favorite things to write. Dirty talk and sex scenes I don't like writing them. They're the very last things that I leave to write. After everything is done, before my book goes to be edited, is I need to scramble last minute to write the sex scenes, because I leave them to the very last minute. I am very uncomfortable writing dirty talk. I'm not a fan of writing dirty talk.
You know, for someone who is uncomfortable of writing dirty talk,
this comes as a shock to us. It seems to come real natural to you. What do you like? Have a glass of wine and you're like, let me pop on my alter ego and just
I listen to explicit music and I get into the zone and I just get her done.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's dope.
One could never tell if you did this right now.
Dirty talk is like that thing though, like, so like, cause I listen on everything on audio because it's hard for me to actually read. So it's like the narrator gets to read me all that dirty talk, and it is like,
oh my God, that is so, you guys, I get so uncomfortable listening. I can't listen to my books on Audible because it's so awkward.
I personally don't like it because I'm like you, like you're like, I finished 2 books today. And I was like, me too. First of all, I find that I read so much faster than I could ever listen to a book.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also I like that when I'm reading, like my imagination that's filling in the way I think their voice might be, or the way I think they might look, not even necessarily your description of what they look like, but what I imagined in my mind that they look like. And I get very, very distracted by audiobooks because I'm like listening to their voice as opposed to the story. So but Shawnee does it so much that she doesn't even, she only notices if it's a really good narrator or if it's a really bad one. If they're in the middle, she like it. I feel like you don't even notice. You're just listening to the story.
They did their job. But I told Bridget the number one best thing to do, like sexually, right? Because like a lot of guys that I've encountered aren't good at dirty talk. They get super self-conscious about it. They don't want to do it, whatever. I've only encountered like one person who was like down for that, shit. And so with my partner, I will listen to a dirty book while we're playing. So I have my headphones in while we're playing. And so I actually really enjoy your scenes because they're like long enough. When you have when you're playing, you don't want to rewind. You don't want to fast forward. You don't want to be like, oh, now we've gone to a new scene. You want enough of a scene so that you can enjoy it.
Yes.
And there's something so good about listening to an erotic fucking scene while you're playing with your partner. That shit is hot.
So you're uncomfortable like writing the raunchy talk and stuff. How does it feel like knowing that all of your fans and stuff are, sort of one-handed reading your books, getting off to it?
That makes me happy. That's, I would like to contribute to
your
joy continuing sex lives. Yes. So that makes me happy.
I don't always ask this, but because you're an author in dark romance, I think it's a little bit more relevant than if you were writing like sweet rom-coms where the characters just kiss at the end and fade to black. Do you write under a pen name? Do your friends and family know what you're writing? Like, do you ever have a friend who's like, by the way, I just read your book?
No, my name is my name. I love my name. It is delicious. And when I conceived the idea of starting to write, I wanted my name to be on my book. My husband, I don't really care what anybody thinks. I have my husband who doesn't really pay me any attention. He's like, go do what you got to do. And my family doesn't read, which is like, I don't even understand. How can you not read? But my family doesn't read, and my friends, nobody around me reads, but they all know what I do and they all think it's nice and they don't really care either way. I don't worry what anybody says. When I go to the doctor and they're asking, what is your occupation? I put gay erotic romance author,
Awesome.
I don't care about any of that.
That's awesome. Good for you. I wouldn't care either. I mean, we were like, our names are on this podcast, and like, I have relatives, my mom and sister listen, and I'm like, you know who I am. I tell you this shit in person. Shawnee, however, doesn't let her sisters or her mom listen.
I am less so. Not because I haven't. I have 0% like shame over what we talk about on this podcast. But like my mom, I come from a very conservative family. And we talk about like our the things we're doing sexually and whatever. And I'm just like, I don't really need them to know all that about me. And I have conversations also like
that would be weird. That would be weird.
Also, like I'm a polyamorous person, and the people who are important know, but not everybody in my family knows. Right. So I don't send the podcast to them to listen to.
This is a completely side note, Avril, to your books, but Shawnee, it boggles my mind that anyone in a family could know something like that and everyone doesn't know, because there's no way my family could keep, if one person knew, It might take a year, it might take 5 years, but someone would be like,
first of all,
someone would let it slip on purpose. They'd be like, so, but you know that she has 2 partners, right? And they'd be like, what? And then it would be a whole like, let me just whisper it out in the grapevine. It would like wildfire.
First of all, I've overheard a conversation with like you and one of your siblings or somebody, and the amount of transfer of information that happens in like 3 seconds.
So much.
You know what I mean?
So much information.
And totally, my family does prayer gossip, you know? Like, do you know what I'm talking about? Where they're like, we need to pray for cousin Reba, because Reba, she's a lesbian now, you know, and she needs Jesus. And you're just like my family does that type of thing.
That's fine.
And spreads all the information. But I've only told the people that like I knew could be trusted with that information. And then I told my parents, because I was like, it's important for you guys to know this is a part of me. I'm not hiding this. And they took it remarkably well for them and their generation. You know, my mom was like, give me a day, let it sink in, you know, and I'll get back to you. And my dad said, he was just like, yeah, I'm not the one you got to worry about. You got to tell your mother.
I was like, Dad.
Yeah. So, and then I have like my sisters and a few cousins that know, and that's pretty much it. We're pretty much just not telling like the older aunties. That's really the ones that you gotta let have, you know, opinions about things. But yeah, so it's like my cousin, actually, she listens to the podcast, my brother's wife. And she texted me about it, and I was like, I was unaware that she was listening. And I was like, oh, what have you heard?
She's heard it all, Shawnee.
She's heard it all. Oh my goddamn, Safi.
So, Avril, do you write full time now?
Yes, I do. Yeah, for a few years, since 2013, actually.
That's awesome.
You have a Patreon too.
I do. Yes.
Patreon
gets all the taboo stuff.
More taboos in your books?
Oh, yeah.
What doesn't make the books? Goddamn, I'm signing up for this Patreon right now.
I start on my Patreon, because I also write incest. So I write all my incest in Patreon, and then when it's finished, I then publish it to Amazon.
Oh, so they get it first.
Yes.
Nice. That's awesome. So it's kind of interesting. We've had a bunch of different authors on, traditionally published, a mix of traditionally, like they publish indie and traditional together, or like only indie authors, like indie authors who exclusively do Kindle Unlimited, indie authors who do, you know, like, so we've done the whole sort of range. And I know we have a lot of listeners who either are authors or are just interested in how an author chooses whether a book should be on Kindle Unlimited or on, like, I know you, the one we read, it was through a website, which the name of the website escapes my brain, where we had to buy it. And I'm just wondering,
PayHip? Was it PayHip?
Yes.
Or
yes.
Love the Sinner?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, like, how do you make those decisions? Like, what have you found that works for you?
Most of my books are in Kindle Unlimited. It's what works best for me and for my business. I only have a handful that's not in Kindle Unlimited, and that's because of stuff beyond my control that we do not have the time to get into. If I had my way, everything would be in Kindle Unlimited. I'm a huge fan of Kindle Unlimited. So yeah, but it made the most sense because it's so accessible, and readers, it's much more discoverable for me. It just works. Kindle Unlimited just works for me.
Yeah, I think Kindle Unlimited is really good for dark romance, and like any like real specific niche of romance, because I feel like those readers are like me, where it's like, I'll read a book like the author and then read 20 more. I'll read the whole back catalog if it's there on Kindle Unlimited, which obviously like you're getting paid for like them reading more of your books. So I definitely feel like we were talking with Lucy Lennox and May Archer, who write male romance. Yeah, but more like not dark. It's more.
No, they're
wonderful,
different.
but definitely in a different section of male romance. But they said the same thing. They're like, it works. Like if our readers like us, they read all the books we have. Yeah, which is awesome.
I wonder when it comes to Kindle Unlimited, right? So I have this like hypothesis that. So one, you didn't do this, and thank God. Like your book ends when it's supposed to end, right? But sometimes I feel like because authors are in Kindle Unlimited, they write a whole bunch of unnecessary pages because it's done by page count.
Yeah, you get paid by Amazon pays you by page count, by the amount of pages read. So there are authors who sort of stack their pages and fluff it, and it ends at like 50%, and then the rest is just who knows what. I mean, it doesn't make sense and it's not fair. And so there are a lot of unethical authors or people who do that stuff. And, Amazon is kind of on the ball when it comes to, finding the culprits and all of that stuff. But I think it's completely unnecessary. Why do you even do that?
I was telling Bridget that, like, when an author does that, I will not pick up another book of theirs. If you had written I would have read your entire catalog if I loved your shit. But now, because you think I'm stupid, honestly, that's what I feel like. I read it and I go, oh, you think I'm stupid. Like, I can't, and now I can't go more.
The book is done, the end. Okay, here, and who I am and all my links, or do you want to buy another one of my books? Here's a link to get to the other book, and that's it. What else is necessary?
Yeah. The only thing I accept is like a teaser for the next book. So if you have 5 pages or 10 pages of your next book, I'm fine with it. But if you're just giving me like 18 epilogues that I don't care about, I'm like, let's move on here, kids. Like, we did a podcast on a book like last year. I forget which one. But I remember being like, ooh, Shani, I don't know if I can finish in time. And then all of a sudden, at like 75%, the book was over. And I was like, well, I don't know what the rest of this is, but I'm ready. I guess it's done.
They put like 2 books in one. It was like
it was like, it's very confusing.
A few years ago, that was rampant, just like putting like 3 or 4 books in one. Oh, it's crazy. It's crazy.
I have a question because Bridget and we come from the YouTube world. And we're YouTubers and content creators and that sort of thing. And so like a lot of what we find is that the story comes in the post-production of it and basically in like the edit. And so I'm curious to know if when you're, after you've written a book or you're almost done with the book, or it's heading into editing, has the book just taken like a hard left? Or have you ever had to scrap a book because you're just like, you know what? It's not really working.
I've never had to completely scrap a book. I've had to do some deep editing for one of my most recent releases, Craving You, which is part of my Dread and Terrible series. I started writing it in 2019. I wrote 50K words and I had to completely gut the story. When I let it sit for a little while, and then when I got back to it and reread what I had written, it wasn't really working, and so I had to completely redo. But I never delete. I sort of remove certain scenes and stash them somewhere on my computer, and then I recycle my scenes. So a sex scene that I wrote for one book will end up being included in a book like 3 books later, and a dialogue will be moved from chapter 10 to chapter 1 and all of that stuff. But I've had to really deeply gut certain books, but never completely delete. I can't delete. Nothing is deleted. Delete is just no.
Do you have a book that you feel like you would want to see visually, like in a movie or series?
Call the Coroner.
Yeah.
Call the Coroner.
She already know.
Yes.
She already know.
It's on my vision board. That book needs to be made into a series on Netflix. Somebody call Mr. Netflix and let him know.
You sound like my auntie.
You know what's interesting about dark romance is, and just like books in general, is obviously there's tons of books that have like very gratuitous violence and stuff like that. But I find, and I love watching gratuitous violence on television and movies, but I do know that reading it is much easier than seeing it, if that makes sense. So while I don't disagree and I would watch the shit out of that series, I also am like, that would be really hard to watch for a lot of people.
It would be,
because that series is dark. It's not medium dark. That's full dark.
You know what? So I read Outlander when I was young, like, I don't know, 15, 14, whatever. And that series is incredibly violent. trying to watch this show, I had to stop after season 2. I just couldn't actually see the things happening. I could read them perfectly fine, but when I saw them, I was just like, oh, my spirit. I gotta pray about this somehow.
That's something I think about, because it would be a dream to have Call the Coroner turn into a series on Netflix. But one of the things is, if ever any of my books got optioned for a series or a movie, I would insist on everything being shown. Like, do not water down my violence. Do not water down my sex scenes. I want everything live and in living color. Otherwise, it is no dice. Yeah. Give it to me raw, baby. Give it to
me. Maybe you're better going with HBO, you know? I don't know if Netflix will go that dark.
You know what though? Like the thing about it is, for so long, romance, you know, all of these production, you know, companies and networks were not creating romance movies, you know, and this was an untapped genre. And now they're starting to tap into the genre, and they're realizing how much money it makes. Yeah. And that there's an audience for everything, you know? And so there's definitely an audience for what you make and who want to watch it visually, you know? And I think it's very interesting because Pornhub just like wiped all of their like illegal content uploads and things like that. And a lot of taboo stuff got wiped, you know, and very dark type of, you know, sexual stuff got wiped off there, because honestly, we don't really know if it was consensual or whatever. And that's why it got wiped. But it had so many views, you know, like it had so many people watching that.
Yeah, there's always a market for.
Yeah. And so like the fact that if we were to make Call the Coroner, it's ethically made and people get to see the shit that they want to see, that makes fucking sense to me.
It's a story, and it's a love story. I mean, it just takes a different turn to get to the love.
A little twist.
I mean, just a few little bumps and hiccups along the way.
Cages and knives, you know, the usual.
A little bloodletting. Who doesn't love a little bloodletting?
Who doesn't want a little bloodletting? little heavy and light choking. Not just light choking, heavy choking, all the choking.
Torture is, like Stavros says, torture is foreplay, you know?
Yeah. Well, like, I mean,
foreplay.
I mean, I'm in the kink community, and there's a lot of that consensually done, and people love that shit. And I remember watching going to like a I forget what they're called. It's not dangerous play class, but whatever, where they did like knife play and all these sort of and needle play and like hooks and things like that. And like people love that shit. Like,
yeah, like I said, there's an audience for everything. What one person, you know, thinks is bad, wrong, disgusting. Another person is just like, yes, give me more.
Yummy.
There's always an audience. There's always an audience.
That is awesome. Honestly, your books, for me at least, are the first ones I've encountered like it. And I'm so happy, because it was literally my number one complaint this entire season was like, I'm tired of the Heart of Gold. I don't care about their Heart of Gold. You're going to if you're going to be a bad character, be a bad character. Like lean in with your whole chest. You know what I mean? Like
most of my guys are, well, they're not, they straddle the line between good and bad, and they lean heavily to the bad side. Because when I first started writing, that's why I wrote the men that I wrote. It's nice to have the good guy and the nice guy and all of that stuff, but I wanted to write about men who were not nice guys, and I wanted to write about bad guys doing bad things. I did not want to write about the criminal who was a criminal up until 75% of the book, and then we find out that he was actually an undercover cop who was just pretending to be bad for bad sake. And so that's why in Love the Sinner, Angelo is a bad guy. He has his mother who he adores, who adores him, and he has his friends, and he falls in love with the cop who's trying to take him down, but he's an actual bad guy. And I show you how
he like kills people. He keeps killing people. He doesn't like I thought that was one nice thing is that I don't like I don't mind love at first sight. Like one of my favorite tropes is like fated mates in paranormal. And so I'm totally down for that. Like I'm down for like that animalistic, like, I saw them and they're mine. Give them to me. Yes. I deserve them. They're mine. But I'm glad that you at least so far in the ones I've read, you don't have like, oh, they met them and so then they changed their whole life that moment.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
I don't mind that they like change their life or that they decide to evolve as a person. But I don't want it to be like, and that second they all of a sudden stop killing people when they're an assassin. And it's like, did they though?
I was also very
conscious
of that. I was also very conscious of that when I wrote Angelo, because there was a point when Angelo had to make some decisions about what he was going to do if he wanted to be with Gabe, what he was going to do. And he made those decisions, but they weren't all cut and dried.
No.
Gabe didn't like some of the decisions that he made. And he didn't, there wasn't a moment where he changed for Gabe. He changed because the time had come for him to change, and he wanted something better. He wanted something different. And in order to get those things, changes had to be made. And he made those, but it wasn't,
there were consequences too, which I enjoyed. Because I love a good caper movie where like everyone squirrels away from the law. But I'm like, in reality, like most people eventually who are in organized crime die or go to prison. That's just a fact. And so
it's a fact. There were consequences to the choices that he made, and he had to live with those consequences. And then when he got a second chance, what was he going to do with that second chance? How was he going to, move forward?
Sweet love. That's what he was going to do.
Also, the one thing I like about this Love the Sinner, right, was that like, yes, the sex was like, oof, but it was also so sweet.
Yeah.
It was so like, and the balance of that was so good. Yeah. I worked
so hard on that.
I was like, oh my gosh. I like, it's so weird because like, like Angelo's, doing whatever he's going to do, whatever. But like, I never find that in dark romance, I'm sitting there going like, and this is the first time I've ever seen the dark romance.
I was very conscious of the balance because I didn't want to show him being all bad, and I didn't want to show him being all sweet and lovey-dovey with Gabe. So there had to be a balance. And so you would see him go and kill somebody, and then you would see him go to Gabe, and he would bottom for Gabe, and he would love his man, and he would hug him, and they're my first men, and I adore them, especially when Gabe would grab him by the throat. Good Lord, and just throw him up against the wall.
We love a good scene where they're just dominating.
Domination.
I like the differences because I really wanted to show his strength when he was being Angelo, the bad guy out in those streets doing his bad guy thing. He had to be strong, and there was never a moment when he was not strong. But when he went to Gabe, he was able to sort of put that weight down and just be a guy who was in love with this other person and trying to make it all fit.
Yeah. I do like in books when there's like the character has enough strength that like when you crash against them and like keep pushing, they are like, I'll take it. Give me more. What else you got? Like I'm a fan of.
That's also what I think I like about gay romance in general, because like when two guys go at it, they can go harder. Yes. Like they can just go hard.
That's a good thing.
Angelo reminded me of the last show that I really watched that was like the most violent was The Wire. And there was a character, I can't remember his name, but he was like the guy who like ran the streets, and he was gay, and he always had like a boy toy, and he was ruthless, and people would make fun of him for it, but he was like ruthless, and everybody was scared of him, and he would just come out of nowhere when you weren't expecting him, he would just come out of nowhere. And I just remember that it was the best, like that was the best character. I think he's like number one, everyone's favorite character from that series or whatever. And that's kind of what it reminded me of, like Angelo reminded me of.
I really loved Angelo because he was so in love with Gabe. From the moment he met Gabe, he was so obsessed with Gabe. And there was a softness in him that I didn't expect to write when I was like, okay, I'm going to write about this gun runner and this cop who he's going to fall in love with. I expected it to be just dark and dark and dark. And he really surprised me with the way he was so soft with Gabe and so tender and so loving. It surprised me. And it was so sweet. I didn't expect that from him because when I go into writing a book, I don't know anything about the characters except the most 1 or 2 points of, okay, he's this person and he's going to do this. That's really all I know. So as I'm writing chapter by chapter, line by line, I'm discovering who they are. And as I wrote more into the story, and I saw his interactions with Gabe and how he just allowed Gabe to be his man and to take him over. And he just sort of melted into Gabe, and I was like, that shit is so sexy. How you just gonna go to you're just gonna kill up somebody and all of that stuff. You out here just running those streets, and then you go home, you go to Gabe and you're like on your knees and you're just like on your, come on, it's so sexy.
There's just something about when someone's an asshole to everyone else, but like a sweetheart for you. It's just, there's just something about it.
I love that.
Are you planning on doing putting Call the Coroner on audio?
I've been trying for ages to get Call the Coroner on audio, and it is so hard because Daniel Nieto has something going on with his voice. As you know, he has Stavros tried to kill him and fucked up his voice. And so it's so difficult to get a narrator who can bring me that voice.
Like real.
I've been having so many auditions and I can never quite get that voice down. And that's like one of the major drawbacks with getting all of my books to audio, because I have a lot of men who aren't English. So because I have a lot of diversity in my books, and so everybody has a different accent from a different country, and especially with Daniel,
so it's like everyone's from a different place. And
is it something you think you could actually achieve with an effect on the actual audio file, like on their voice?
I have no idea. I haven't tried it yet. I'm still trying to get
Shawnee used to produce audiobooks. That's what she used to do with her partner.
I'm still auditioning. I'm so far nothing, but I would love to do it.
Well, I'm curious because so like Bridget said, we used to produce audiobooks for Audible, but also I'm a musician, right? And so I just deal with a lot of effects, vocal effects, and that sort of thing. And so I'm wondering if it's possible to get a voice that's very close to what you want, and then play with the effects that can actually be put on that voice to make it more growly, to make it lower, to make it a little bit more affected, instead of trying to audition everyone under the sun.
Because I'm on the hunt for the perfect Daniel Nieto voice, and it seems like it's not out there. It's nowhere to be found.
What you need is someone who is like a lifelong smoker.
Yeah.
Who's maybe like 2 or 3 days into a bender, who is possibly out at the club screaming to his favorite musician all night. The next day he wakes up and he's Daniel Nieto. He's just like, I frog in there.
I need this book to be accessible. Okay, I need this book to be accessible to everyone. I feel like everybody should be able to enjoy this book. Bridget tells me the books that are on audio. I was super jealous. The books that are not on audio, she tells me the story. Which is
with
great.
Quotes too. I like to really make it an experience.
She does the sexy talk and all the things.
I do.
Which I love, because that's actually, my sister used to tell us stories when we were a kid, like books that we weren't allowed to read, like Harry Potter we weren't allowed to read. So she actually told us like verbally the entirety of the story. So I totally dig it. But I was just like, I was like, I need to read this book. I need to. And I try sometimes books that I'm like super a fan of. I'm like, okay, it's not an audio. I'm gonna try to read it. And it's just like impossible. I can get through like maybe a couple pages and then my eyes just were like, no, can't.
I've been trying, and I'm probably I didn't know how it's gonna work, but it's really up high on my to-do list of things to get done. That's the number one request of all of my books that aren't in audio. Call the Coroner is my number one requested book. So I'm trying to get it done.
Give it to the people, man. The people want it. If they say they want it, if they say they need
it. Give it to them, please.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Avril, what are you reading? Like, do you have any good recommendations for, if people are, you read kind of the genre that you write, what of your books do you think like you would want them to start with? And what are you reading?
I'm reading, mostly I read 90% of what I'm reading nowadays is MF, so straight romances. And I go through different phases. When whatever book I'm working on, if it's not working for me, then I'm just glomming onto all MM. But if whatever I'm working on is sort of hitting my reader spot, then I go to MF. So right now, what I'm working on is hitting all the bases for me. So I'm reading a lot of MF, a lot of Black romances. I'm obsessed. But I do have my faves with the MM. I read a lot of Riley Hart. I read a lot of Nikki James. I just finished reading Kay Webster's latest. I think it just came out today, which is a paranormal, Wolf Shifters. Really good.
Ooh.
But if readers wanted to find...
You're just hitting my catnip. I'm sorry.
We love shifters.
Did you say it was a shifter?
I'm obsessed with shifters as well. But if readers wanted to know where to start with my books, Love the Sinner and all the books in the Brooklyn Sinner series, that's like the intro into all my books, because for some reason, my weird brain has decided that every other series that I've written thus far branched out of the Brooklyn Sinners.
Yeah, I saw it. Is it Siren? Siren?
Siren, yes.
Siren. I was like, oh, I recognize his name. Look at you.
Siren is all over. Siren is one of my most favorite characters. My most beloved as well.
Yeah, he definitely seems like the guy who's like trickily got his little fingers in all the little pies.
Yeah,
he's like, you guys
he knows
can't
everything
touch
about
me.
everybody,
Like,
and he's just untouchable, and so just always there, always up in everybody's business, and just I love him.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to read more of the books that he's featured in. We always like to ask this as one of our newer questions, but we're getting such good answers that we enjoy it. If you had any relationship advice, real life, not like, hey, if someone shoots you, you should forgive them and have a happily ever after, but like real life advice for maintaining a long relationship happily.
I've been with my husband for 18 years. I don't know how that happened. It just happened. I guess we like each other. Laughter. He makes me laugh. And we have we're friends. So you have to be friends with your partner. You have to be able to laugh. Like, to me, that's the most important thing. And make sure they feed you, because I like to eat. And if your partner feeds you, then, I mean, that's the most important thing. If they feed you, then they love you. That's it. But no, laughter is most important. I mean, you're going to have some hard times, because especially if it's a long relationship, you're going to go through so many things. But if you have a sense of humor, not afraid to just be silly with each other, and just let go and be silly with each other, then I think that it makes everything better. As long as you can laugh with each other, it fixes so many things. Laughter fixes everything.
I agree.
Avril, I feel like we're like long lost separated twins or something like that. This whole interview, I've been like, me too. Oh my gosh.
This is really awesome. It was so awesome to talk to you.
Thank you guys for inviting me. It was so comfortable.
Yay.
I was a little bit nervous. I was a little bit scared, this being my very first time and all. But you guys made it painless. It was smooth.
Thank you, girl. Thank you.
I'm going to use that as a soundbite on our website. It was smooth. Well, thank you so much for being here with us. And we'll make sure that everyone can check out all your books with links on the website. And this has been so fun.
Thank you. I had so much fun.
Thanks for listening.
Subscribe to our channel to get new episodes, clips, and more.
And click here to watch our previous reviews and author interviews.